interviewed Andrew Butler from Hercules and Love Affair last year, and he made a really great point about how, for him, the most exciting music is produced when one scene starts to fade, but the next big thing hasn't yet arrived. And I kind of think of it like when a sort of new star is being born, with all this sort of gas and dust coming together before the rules of that scene or genre are sort of established, because that's kind of what happens, isn't it? And when that's happening, it's much more volatile, experimental, and kind of liberated as well. So, just delving into the past a little bit, in the late '70s, it was clearly sort of time for a change, and bands like Bush Tetras, pop group, the Raincoats, Gang of Four, Pigbag, the Mekons, and the band that my guest fronted for a brief but hugely influential time, were creating that sort of fork in the road. The Au Pairs took their music in a direction that for me was as exciting as it was inventive, through this sort of mighty kind of rhythm section that really sort of made your hips shake. Well, I mean, it made me rattle even then, and they sort of taut, jagged guitar and very distinctive vocals and lyrics of my guest. They looked great, they sounded great, and they were singing about stuff that mattered: misogyny, racism, conformism, relationships. And they were, to my mind at least, leaders in creating this sort of wave of bands whose impact is being felt now more than ever. And pioneers isn't too strong a word in my opinion. Anyway, after the Au Pairs disbanded, I guess she went on a long hiatus doing something completely different, but she's picked up her guitar again, and there's a lot of stuff going on which I think is really, really exciting. So I'll pack it in with all the hot air and just introduce a very, very special guest, Lesley Woods. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all. So an exciting time, yeah. The just briefly sort of going back to the age. I don't want to sort of dwell on it too much, but for me, I mean, I'm 55, and those kind of early '80s, it was just like a really important sort of period in my life. I mean, some things don't change. The Tories were in power, basically, sort of fucking everybody over like they're still doing. I was trying to sort of
Yeah,
find my own identity, and I probably still am, and sort of reconcile my love of underground music, which is what I really loved, with this sort of with my I was trained classically, so I played the cello, and I was getting all my
oh,
music. Yeah, I
lovely
know.
instrument.
I know, and but
I love the cello.
I love it now. I bought myself one
Oh,
again. I hadn't picked it up for
so
like 40 years, like
wow.
35 years. I hadn't picked it up for 35 years, and I kind of thought I gave it up because I was a sort of petulant teenager, and I was like, recently I thought I've got a bit of unfinished business here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's a similar thing. I get that. So I, yeah. So what prompted you to pick it up? Just because you kind of got over being a rebellious teenager,
I think
or
it took me a while. It took me a while to get over it, but yeah, it was basically that. I think that also my parents were coming towards the end of their life, and they had particularly my dad had really um let's say encouraged me in it.
right?
He'd sort of pushed me into it. It was his thing. He loved classical music, and he wanted me to do something in that sort of vein. And
Mhm.
I kind of he I don't think he was really upset when I gave it up. And so I think
Mm,
it was like one of those sort of feelings, like I should do something again, but on my terms this time. If that makes sense.
right. Yeah. So how are you finding getting back into it? Is it like, because I found when I first started playing my guitar again, it was really like starting almost from scratch.
Mm,
But now I've been playing what I've been playing with my set for, I don't know, for a while. I've noticed
mm,
that it's actually become a hell of a lot easier. Like, for example, in one of the tracks, I might do a very short, I wouldn't exactly call it a guitar solo, but when I first started playing it, every time I played it, I made thousands of mistakes. But now I'm finding that I can actually do it a lot easier. So, I mean, it's just true that practice, no matter how old you are or what context, whether you're learning an instrument for the first time or revisiting it after a really, really long break, there's no doubt that, as long as you keep doing it, you will get better and you will be able to do it, which is really great and very encouraging.
When you started playing again, I mean, had you literally not touched your guitar,
I would
or
say
had
I
you
haven't
dabbled?
touched it, but I haven't really played it. I mean, I would go for months, even, well, weeks, months without
Mm,
picking it up. I've always had a guitar around,
mm,
always had an acoustic or an electric guitar around. I didn't invest in a quality electric guitar till, well, it's quite funny. I can't remember how long ago it was. Oh, shit. I think it was before COVID.
mm.
I got asked to support Lena Lovitch. I was walking,
Right.
I was walking my dog in the park, and I got this phone call, and this guy was like, "I'm in the Lena Lovitch band. We would like you to support us." And I thought he was having. I said, "Are you having a laugh and a joke?" But turns out it was for real. But so I went out and bought this Fender Stratocaster. I
Mm,
actually couldn't even remember the guitar I had in the au pairs. It was actually a Fender Telecaster.
mm,
I went out and bought a Fender Stratocaster by mistake, but it's the guitar I've got, and I'm okay with it.
mm.
Um, and then actually the tour didn't happen; it got cancelled.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it was quite funny. But I did do one gig with them. They did one gig at the Lexington, and I played
Mm.
with them. I was so nervous, and
Were
I
you?
just got back into playing the electric guitar, a quality electric guitar, through through that really.
And and that was like your first kind of live performance for a long
Um,
time.
it was my first live performance with a constructed set
Yeah.
and with a rehearsed set. What I did was I made these backing tracks, which I have since then remixed with
Mm,
someone who knows what they're doing
mm.
and who knows how to work with Ableton, which is what
Right.
I recorded them on. But
Mm,
at the time I initially recorded them, I didn't know how Ableton really worked.
yeah.
During COVID, I did a couple of courses, music production for women courses, which
Mm,
taught me a lot about Ableton.
mm,
But I still don't know as much as there is to know. I know a lot more, but
mm,
yeah, I recorded these backing tracks on Ableton, and that, as I say, since they were first recorded, I've remixed them a few times, um, and they're now they're what I use as my performance. So
yes,
the gig I did with Lena Lovitch was the first time I went out and performed live with a properly rehearsed, constructed set, if you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah. So you said that you were nervous doing that.
Oh God, I was
Yeah.
absolutely terrified.
Oh my God! Wow.
When I hear a recording of the concert, you can hear that I'm really nervous because my voice is wobbling, wavering, a bit like Eartha Kitt. I mean, probably not quite as melodic.
What did you?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you? Was this when you were in that? You're obviously aware that you sort of nervous for it. I mean, was it really sort of just adrenaline that's getting you through to
Um,
the end of it? And then, but does it come back when you've been away and then it all sort of comes back?
Well, then I jumped in at the deep end and I got offered a support slot with the Chameleons in
Yeah.
summer. And that was doing really, I would say, well, they're not massive gigs, not the size of Wembley or any
Mm,
Glastonbury but they were gigs that held maybe 1,000 people.
mm,
And I was very nervous about
mm,
that. initially, but then I got into it. I got into the swing of it, being on tour and the sound, sound checking at the same time every evening. The egg sandwiches. I lived on egg and prawn cocktail sandwiches.
Oh, the famous riders, yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And it was so funny because I was said I'd like some fruit. So I always had my own little dressing room, and I get in there and there'd be these huge bunches of bananas. And I'd be like, I can't eat 12 bananas,
It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, no, it was okay because the Chameleons they had their tour manager, they had their road crew, their sound man. There were plenty of people who were in need of bananas and spare
So,
bottles of beer.
well, yeah, I mean yeah, but I mean, who needs anything more than bananas and beer? I mean, that's
Bananas, beer, crisps. I used to go into their dressing room and swap my crisps for the cheese and onion because when they weren't looking, or look in their fridge and see what sandwiches they got.
oh, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah, it was good. It was great. I
So
mean,
what's like with learning Ableton? What do you think that's I mean, how's that? I mean, how's that sort of changed your the way that you sort of approach things now? I mean, do you feel
I really like it. I think it's
yeah,
great to kind of be in control. I wish I knew more about how to work with it because
mm.
the thing I have the biggest problem with is have you ever used a digital audio workstation?
I mean, the only thing that I've sort of used has been GarageBand.
Right, well, it's similar. I mean, I don't know whether they have MIDI on GarageBand, but that's where you kind of
Yeah,
input data.
yeah,
Um, I'd be absolutely fine with Ableton if I knew how to do drum beats, but I
right.
don't. And that's the only thing that holds me back. And
Mm,
so I lie in bed at night trying to think of ways of short circuiting that whole process of trying to record a drum beat for a
mm,
song that kind in MIDI because it just would take me too long to do it because
mm.
you have to put in the like little beats on the beats of the bar and it gets really complicated and you just almost end up tearing your hair out. I do, or
Mm.
or thinking, oh God, if there was a drummer in the room, you just go hit the bass
Just
drum. Or,
those sort
yeah,
of
so
little conundrums.
So that is what drives me crazy. And then I think, oh,
Mm,
I could short circuit it because I've got a drum machine, an
mm.
electric drum machine. But I have the same problem. I don't know how to program drums because I'm not a drummer. Um,
Yeah, I
or
see.
that, or that's my excuse. Which is a shame because I mean, I think rhythm in music is very important to me.
Mm,
Rhythm, anything, a great drum beat
yeah,
um, that's for me that can be a source of great inspiration for lyrics
absolutely.
and what comes next and for a whole song. So it is quite frustrating for me that I can't do that. And
Mm.
I am looking for someone who would like be happy to come around and program drum beats
And
for me.
program and help, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
know. I mean, I might. We can have a chat about that after. I might know somebody who can,
Oh,
could help with things.
you know so many people, Giles.
Fountain of all knowledge. Yeah, I'm not sure how good the knowledge is, but there you go. No, we can. I'm sure
Yeah,
we can try and help with that. So,
that
I
might
mean,
be great.
going back to sort of. I'm trying to sort of think of your formative influences. But what sort of shaped you and basically kind of like through your life shaped who you've become now. So I mean, going back to the early days, I mean, what were your sort of formative influences in terms of who you were hanging out with, what was happening in your childhood?
Well, I think I always wanted to be in a band. I think I remember wanting to be in a band because
Mm,
I learned to play guitar. I started off learning classical guitar. Then I
Yeah.
learned how to play, and I had classical guitar lessons. And then I had lessons with another guitar teacher, private lessons, because I really
Yeah.
liked. I mean, I do think that every child should learn how to play an instrument.
I agree.
I think it adds so much to
Totally
your
agree.
life and whatever.
Mm.
Keeps you off the streets, keeps you out of trouble, gives you something else to live for besides
Mm.
what what is the norm that like for girls it would be, or even for boys, get married and have babies and
Mm.
get a mortgage. But
Yeah.
it gives you something, it just gives you something to do. And so and then I started writing songs, and then I thought, oh, I love doing this. I really love it, and I wanted to get a band together. And then I met Paul, who turned out to be the guitarist in the Au Pairs. I met
Yeah.
him at a bus stop in Birmingham, and he
Mm.
had long black curly hair and was wearing a leather bomber jacket.
Mm.
And I was in Dukes, and he was living up the road with his mum and dad. Anyway, we got chatting, and it turned out he was in this band. So I was immediately interested in him.
Mm.
And he was in a band with Pete,
Yeah.
who turned out to be the drummer in the Au Pairs. Well, eventually, to cut a long story short, we got a band together, which was absolute crap. But
Mm.
then I went to Keele for a year, Keele University, and Keele University had a reputation for being a real left wing.
Quite radical.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I got politicized, and I met people who were into the IMG and SWP and
Mm.
blah blah blah, and feminism. I got into feminism. And I thought, oh, this is amazing because it kind of articulates all these things as a child that I used to get angry with my mum about,
Mm.
and things that, as a girl, you felt there was a differential treatment,
Yeah.
without the double standard and everything, which always seemed terribly unjust to me. Anyway, so I got into left wing politics and feminism, and that kind of was a great source of inspiration. Oh, now I can write songs about other things besides boy meets girl, blah, blah,
Mm.
blah. And all these new ideas, yeah. And then the Rock Against Racism movement was going on,
Mm.
and so we kind of got the Au Pairs together, and it coincided with the emergence of Rock Against Racism. So I don't know, I started going to Rock Against Racism meetings,
Mm.
and that way I met Martin, who became the manager, who was at Birmingham University, where again there was a lot of left wing
Yeah.
academics. Anyway,
Mm.
so what was the question? Formative, what's
Yeah,
it?
sort of formative influences. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was like punk going on.
Mm.
So there were all these things to me, it seemed to me like all these new things going on that I'd never come across before, like
Mm.
Rock Against Racism, left wing feminism, punk. And so it seemed like a very exciting time, and it just seemed like there was a lot of, what do you call it? Not fodder. A lot of stuff that you could to be inspired
You're
by.
inspired by. Yeah.
But in terms of like other women
Mm.
in bands, the only ones that I really remember that I was influenced by was Janis Joplin.
Yeah.
She sang in a very ballsy way. She didn't try to be pretty and nice. She didn't conform to any sex object aesthetic,
Mm.
And Patti Smith,
Mm.
who also was uncompromising. And
Yeah.
then later I became aware of the Slits and polystyrene and the Raincoats and
Mm.
other women who were, rising to the challenge. And
Mm.
so, yeah, So
So
hopefully,
was it?
just go
Yeah,
on.
sorry, I was going to say, women like Janis Joplin and and Patti Smith, those women singers that really appeal to you. Was that something that you f- you could just you identified with what they were with how they approached their music, their life? That was something that you felt you could really identify with.
Um, yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, Janis Joplin and Patti Smith were both American,
Mm,
um, and Janis Joplin was into had a heroin issue.
yeah.
Um, um, but in terms of their
Kind
well,
of I guess they're sort of uncompromising, certainly with Patti Smith anyway, like an uncompromising attitude. That was something that
yeah,
that
I mean, I
was
think their stories are quite distinct, Patti Smith and
mm,
Janis Joplin. I think really it was the vocal style that
yeah,
mostly drew me to them because they were. Um, I always really like women who sing from their, really belt it out,
mm,
like Aretha Franklin.
yeah, yeah,
Women who sing really like their voices are really strong and
mm,
majestic, you
mm,
know, because a lot of girl singers, especially at that time,
mm,
tended to had sounded very nice. They had to look very nice and sound very nice, and
yeah,
be girl-like and feminine. So to
yeah,
me, Janis Joplin and Patti Smith sang more like blokes, like more like guys. They didn't use their voice to sound pretty and make you cry or make you know. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I remember Joan Armour Trading brought out
mm,
that album, Love and Affection,
yeah,
and I went to see January Trading at the time she did it. Again, she was quite a revolutionary female artist at that time.
I
And
agree.
I remember my landlady in Diggs, when I played it, she said she thought that Joan Armour Trading was a bloke
Mm,
because of the way that she sang. So she was another female, icon to me. I thought she was great because she was unique and she didn't compromise. She didn't try to look pretty. She didn't, do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, I think those people were like sources of encouragement and inspiration. Like
Mm.
you don't have to um, be like um,
I
I'm
guess it's
trying
sort
to
of like kind of conforming to what the mainstream was projecting what women should be. That it
yeah,
was an entire sort of false projection.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
I even remember, like the cover of those Top of the Pops compilation albums, in the 70s. I mean,
yeah.
it was just all like that, wasn't it?
Well, like women being used as sex objects.
Yeah,
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 sure.
entirely.
Yeah, showing off their boobs and their asses and
Mm.
yeah, that yeah, exactly. So yeah,
And,
so
and
we
I also remember the universities and those sort of higher education institutes around about, well, because I went to Liverpool in the sort of the mid-80s, and that was, yeah, I mean, that was sort of pretty, yeah, it was very left wing. I mean,
right,
Liverpool was, I think, because of its sort of history, it was just a couple of years after I think the riots in Toxteth, which were 81, I think. So I think I went there 85,
right.
and so they were, kind of, places where I think, those sort of like-minded communities were forming, based on, kind of political or kind of social values.
Hmm.
Where real like-minded people were gathering, and then, they were kind of ripe for, kind of bands forming, and whether it's any sort of art, whether it was poetry, music, art, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being in Liverpool and there being roadblocks
Mm.
or barricades, but I think that must be because of what those Toxteth riots that you mentioned.
Could have been, yeah.
Um, yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's the first time I'd ever been there, but um, yeah. So what you're saying is that what are you saying? That
I guess you know, your experience of being in Birmingham, then at Kiel, you know, those were um, institutions, I guess, where, you know, like-minded people were kind of gathering and were sort of forming into groups, and it was a great kind of like breeding ground almost for, you know, for culture, you know, for,
yeah,
you know, for music, poetry, whatever those I guess, you know, cultural forms were.
yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things that were wrong with society. You know, there was a
Mm,
lot of injustice and unfairness. I mean, I'm just thinking that my generation probably caught the tail end of the class system.
yeah.
But I mean, you know, I mean, people of my parents' generation used to tell us stories about how they got ostracized by families because they married someone who wasn't considered to be of their own class. That
Mm,
was the that was almost like the first issue. The first thing that was wrong was the class system. The second thing that was wrong was the racism.
yeah.
I don't know if we should put them into a hierarchy of wrongs.
Mm,
A wrong is a wrong, but and then there was homophobia, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's been some. I know that I'm not saying there aren't still issues, but there have,
Mm,
you know, there have been legislative changes and changes in society as well. Like I live in northeast London, the Craig's um, stonking ground,
yeah.
and it's just incredible to me. I live next to Victoria Park, but guys walk around holding hands,
Mm, mm,
girls
mm,
walk around with their arms around each other, and in where I live, it's like I don't know whether you'd say it's working class, but I live in a close, and just across the road, it's mostly social housing. I would imagine council housing.
yeah.
But like, you know, people just accept people now, you know,
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
more. And I think that's where change is really reflected, not necessarily in the law that says sex discrimination is
Mm,
unlawful, but in the way people conduct their relationships, their personal relationships, the way they respond. You know, I'm
yeah.
not saying that. I mean, I live in London. I do recognise that in a way you can get very spoilt living in London because you think,
Yeah.
oh, it's just like this all over the world. But and I do appreciate that there are parts of this country um, where, you know,
Yeah.
being gay is still likely to attract violence and adverse interest. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It feels like the, you know, kind of like, you know, the cities, you know, yeah, we are kind of lucky, you know, in the cities, you know, there's certainly sort of more open-minded, and then,
yeah,
you know, you kind of get out into the, you know, out of that area, you're more likely to, you know, come
sure.
across come across those sort of issues, you know, that are more sort of closed-minded
The
crowds.
only gay in the village. Yeah, like
Yes.
I had a
Yes,
friend
that was one. Yeah, yeah.
who lived in the sticks in Somerset. I think the village folk were actually quite tolerant of the fact that she was a
Mm,
gay woman, but
mm,
but she was a Greek Cypriot, but she was like, it was almost like she was the only black in the village. But I
mm,
mean, she was a Greek Cypriot, you
mm,
know. So, and I noticed that a lot of the time when I go away on holiday, I always go away to the sun um,
mm.
or where I always notice that there is a very, you know, that there are very few black people around.
Mm.
Um, like it's very predominantly white, you
White.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
and it, yeah. Well, where was I recently? Where? Well, can't remember. It might come back to me.
No, I think you're right with that, though. You know, going to the you know, the sort of the holiday resorts, or kind of
Yeah,
wherever, certainly within Europe.
Yeah, and I think
It definitely feels like that. You're right.
you notice that because, like, you ride on the underground in London, or you get on the bus, and you know, it's just so mixed up,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
that when you are in an environment, you suddenly, wow, it's just like,
It's
yeah,
very noticeable, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, when you were involved in the, you know, in the Rock Against Racism movement, I mean, what was what sort were you facing? What sort of obstacles were you facing in that? You know, from the from the the population at large, but anybody that wasn't involved in that.
Uh, well, there was a really big skinhead. There was a really, there was a lot of Nazi um, stuff going on. There were a lot of NF
Mm,
khaki bashing,
mm,
which is why Rock Against Race. Well, I know that history says that it's what's my memory is so bad. What was that guy, that famous guitarist?
oh,
What he said? Oh,
Eric Clapton.
that's it. Yeah,
Clapton. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was necessary for Rock Against Racism, I think, to emerge in the culture because there was real grassroots racism going on. It was very
Yeah.
violent,
It was very
and
overt as well, wasn't it? Then very overt.
yeah, I mean, it
Mm,
frighteningly so. It
mm,
was real shocking that I remember one gig we did in Oxford where some of our equipment got nicked. Anyway,
mm,
we went piling round in the van to we got told where the people who nicked it and where the equipment was. We went tearing round in the van to their house, and I said, "I'll go and get in because they're less likely to attack a woman than a bloke."
mm.
So I knocked on the door. I went in, and my God, there were these skinheads. There were these guys with long hair, and there were all these pictures of Adolf Hitler and
Oh
all this
shit!
Nazi regalia all over the walls.
Oh my
I was
god!
like absolutely stunned, like, that it was just like
Wow.
this idolatry of Adolf Hitler still going on. And like, I remember this woman who worked for this magazine called, oh, what was it called? It was an anti-racist magazine which kind of reported on like Nazi activity in Europe.
Mm,
And it was
mm,
still, I mean, I don't know if it still goes on now.
mm.
I don't know whether there are still, I guess there are when you think about people like UKIP and things like that. But
Yeah.
this like there's still a very, very strong, it seemed to me like a very strong ideological movement going on, which was very sinister and very underground.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, um, so I don't know what about now. I'm a bit out of touch now.
I suspect it. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I suspect. I mean, I think it's still there, but I guess the sort of legislation has probably again driven it underground a little bit. Although it's weird. So across the world, you sort of see some places in the US, and it's yeah.
I
I
was
saw something
just,
just the other day where there's just this like group of I don't know how many there were of Nazis, sort of carrying, swastika flags,
where was
on
that?
open display somewhere in the States. I can't remember what part.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that in the States. I mean, Donald Trump and his pandering to,
Mm,
extreme right wing ideology, But having said that, sometimes I get the feeling that the laws that we're seeing passed now, particularly in immigration,
mm,
are fascist laws, but it's just that we don't see them as fascist because
yeah,
I think it is very insidious, but it just
I agree.
kind of it has overtones of like, what happened when Adolf Hitler first came on the scene and how
Mm,
gradually the laws changed until Jewish people had to wear yellow stars, couldn't sit next to other people
mm,
on the bus, blah blah blah, and then I mean, it astounds me that, you know, even with all the memory and knowledge about that, we still had a we still created this apartheid system in South
Yeah,
Africa, you know, and that we had to endure that for many years.
yeah,
Um, it's like it's just so I don't think you can ever really get complacent
I agree.
about and think, oh God, we're there now, we've arrived, everything's fine. I mean, just the fact that they've changed the abortion laws in America serves
Mm,
as um, a warning that you know you know it just isn't fine, and you can't be.
yeah,
And but now we have that, but we still now we have the environmental issues, you know, as
mm,
well.
mm,
Um, yeah, yeah. I've just been reading this Jonathan Franzen book, which I picked up in a secondhand bookshop,
mm,
called Freedom. Have you
mm.
ever read any of his
I
books?
haven't. No, no.
Oh, well, it's really great. But he really talks about, he's talking about an American family, but he also manages to bring in a lot of contemporary issues.
Mm,
And one of the issues he's kind of highlighted is the issue of the lack of world resources and how the world is overpopulated and how to redress that, which I
mm.
think in a way is quite a sensitive subject. So I remember like having
Population. Yeah,
over like, you know, I mean, China's what is it, one child policy, forced sterilizations, none of which obviously are all dodgy.
yeah, yeah,
But then this issue about the world being overpopulation. Yeah, sometimes I get a bit carried away with it. I think there is an Illuminati, this group of blokes somewhere up there, um, who are like creating wars as a form of population control. And then this
yeah.
morning I was thinking, well, wars didn't start off being about population control. I mean, the Spanish Armada wasn't about population. I do
No,
get carried away.
no. I'm with you. I'd
Oh,
love this
I
sort of stuff.
imagine
I love this sort of stuff. Honestly,
but the Spanish Armada wasn't about population
no.
control. But now I'm wondering, do our wars, particularly in places like Yemen or Eritrea or wherever, or are they all part of somebody's evil or overall plan to just, you know, as I say, using ideology as a mechanism to create
Mm,
wars to just make sure thousands and thousands of people get
yeah.
killed or starved to death every so often, so that there's just a bit of space left for the people who are still here.
Well, I think that the issue of kind of institutionalization, this sort of systemic problems that sort of exist. You kind of which is about systemic racism. That it's so institutionalized that the 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 elite do not want to lift the lid. They keep that sort of lid down, and this is creating this sort of huge wealth disparity. I mean,
Uh,
it's becoming even more. I mean, so obvious now,
I know it
so
makes me
obvious
sick.
that I mean, I did read something the other day where the argument was being put that it's not population growth is not the issue. It is the wealth distribution that is the problem. That
Absolutely.
if you shift that that distribution dial just a few percentage points, or even 1-2%, you would change the whole kind of dynamic of whether you thought that whether it would appear that that a vast percentage of the population can't be fed, and it's to do with wealth and how much the system
Yeah,
wants to change it. It doesn't.
I mean, yeah, it really needs to be redressed. The way, yeah, just the way food is allocated.
Mm,
You know, it's. I see so much wastage. It's
yeah,
disgusting. I've just
it's
come back
disgusting, isn't
from
it? Yeah.
holiday. I went to Gran Canaria and I
Mm,
booked. It wasn't like a massively expensive. I only went away for a week,
mm, mm,
and it wasn't massive. You can't get a cheap well, I mean, I went on my own. So, but I stayed in the hotel, and breakfast was included, and it was one of those buffet breakfasts. Now it was really good quality food. I've been on some when the food is absolute kike, but the food was really nice. But there was so much
So
wasted,
much. Yeah.
and I just think was hoping that all the people that worked there, it was a little village, and apparently it's been, I don't know, the local authority there, they made great inroads. They built a school for the kids of the local population. I just hope that, and I guess the predominant industry, apart from construction into the big hills of mud that they seem to have done, built tunnels and things and motorways and really nice. The tourism must be one of the main industries there. But I just hope that the people that work in the hotels get all that food that's left over at breakfast.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that it's the one issue that just, I don't know, we seem to be a bit distracted from really being able to think about or do anything about, is the distribution of wealth. It's disgusting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say, so,
it makes me very angry.
Yeah, no, it does me as well. I mean, I suppose especially as I get older, you start to see I don't know, maybe you just sort of,
the revolution.
Yeah,
the older I get, the more inclined I am to think, fuck it, let's just stir up some trouble. Let's stir up a revolution. Maybe because I'm older, because I've got less to lose, and I've had my life.
It's funny actually. I in the intro I mentioned about the Bush Tetras, and I did an earlier podcast with Cynthia last year or the year before, and I asked her about as she's got older, how does she think about risk, and she's like, oh man, she said, wait till you get to my age. You just do not give a fuck by then.
Yeah.
And she's talking about, exactly about that, about kind of stirring things up, doing things, don't care about what people think. This is like the time to change things.
Because when you get older, it's like, what can they do to you?
Yeah.
I mean, you just really feel like you've got nothing to lose because you've had your life, you've lived it. So I think you're probably, you're less fearful.
I think you sort of see things with through a bit of a different viewpoint, don't you? I think when when you're young, certainly the way that I sort of felt, I felt very, very principled, and my principles, my values haven't changed over the years, but probably the way that I've shown them have. And it's almost like coming full circle now back to when I was a sort of teenager, in terms of how radical I feel about them now.
You're saying you're more radical now.
I'm as radical.
You're as radical as you always were. Oh
yeah.
I haven't changed.
No.
I think also I'm not sure if censorship has changed. I would imagine that we're probably. I mean, back in punk, I think it was part of the rebellion, wasn't it? You knew that you were censored, so you, like the Sex Pistols, God Save the Queen. That people took certain people took so much offence. Oh, you're not supposed to say that Queen.
Yeah.
So that rebellion was partly about like challenging that kind of censorship. But now, I'm not sure whether people are as kowtowed by that censorship as maybe they were. If you know what I'm trying to. Well, I'm not putting that very well.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
It was like a really rebellious thing to do, to sing "God Save the Queen."
Well, it was very shocking, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was very, very shocking at that time.
I'm wondering, would it be as shocking now, having having had that, and having like more things in the culture that do challenge
I
Uh,
remember it's funny, like, thinking back. I mean, I even remember, back when the Opeth's first album came out, and, I was like scared that my mum would find it.
really?
Yeah, yeah, it was the album title, the fact that it just had had the word
The
sex in
worst.
it was like,
Really?
yeah, yeah, and I respect that she'd sort of set my dad on me and stuff like that. I was like, I better keep that hidden. And it was the same, like, playing, God Save the Queen. I mean, and like, my dad wasn't a royalist, I certainly wasn't. My mum was,
Yeah,
but I still had to be careful about what I could play. So there was a definite shock. Things felt more shocking now. It's much harder, I think, to sort of to have to have an impact in that way is
yeah,
much trickier now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, or not, but maybe you don't need to now.
Yeah,
So I don't know why. Why would you want to shock people unless they were like really, towing the line and
mm,
uh, living their life according to false values, like,
yeah.
like,
If it kind of feels like to me like that's those sort of shock values are more you get more of those from the right, from the sort of the shock value sort of feel more at home with the extreme sort of misogyny that you get. These sort of people like Andrew Tate and what have you that seem sort of hell bent on creating this sort of shock.
mm,
I think the
mm,
more stuff now is around that I see, and maybe it's just the stuff that I want myself to see is more around, kind of like empathy, and changing things through empathy,
yeah,
and sort of understanding. Maybe that's just me as I'm changing because I'm getting older. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. What do you mean? Like, you mean what do you
I
mean?
guess I guess I don't. Yeah, I probably didn't explain it that well. I don't, yeah, I think that I
What you mean as
if I
opposed to
if I
responding
try
to
to,
something in an angry,
yes,
like, way, which could alienate
could alienate you,
people.
try to sort of empathize and sort of understand why somebody might object, and try to sort of have a, which is really hard these days, but have a kind of reasoned argument.
Yeah, yeah.
I do remember you talking about that. I do remember watching a clip of a conversation between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni, which was
All
like
right,
in it was like in 1970 or 71. It was a TV debate, and it was the most they had different views on some topics,
right.
but it was the most respectful conversation you've ever heard. It was just such a
Oh, I
great thing to
see.
watch.
The way that they differed with each other, the manner that
Yeah,
they expressed their different opinions. Yeah,
yeah.
that's quite interesting. I think that's something to really aspire to, isn't it?
Mm.
I can't say that I always succeed in doing that, especially if I've had a few drinks. I just degenerate into what I used to do when I was a kid with my
When you were a
mum.
kid, yeah, yeah.
Oh, fuck off. That's fucking load of bollocks. A very reasoned discussion. Yeah, I do aspire to that, but like when I've had a few drinks, I must admit,
Yeah,
I
then
do.
that's all out of the window.
Yeah, I think it's partly because it's a, a lot of the time you can't articulate what you really want to say.
Mm.
I wish I had, sometimes I wish my vocabulary was a lot more expansive.
Well,
Sometimes I can be very eloquent and articulate, but other times I just get like really stuck for words, you know?
interesting actually. So, I mean, when the au pairs split, and you then soon after soon after trained to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, over that period, when you've been doing that, I mean, what? I mean, this is a really kind of broad question, but what kind of things have you learnt, about yourself over that time?
Um, well, uh, well, I'm not a particularly great lawyer. Um, so I've learnt that. I'm not like some
Good.
barristers are just really they're just really into it, and they do, I mean they do. I mean, I think what they do is they draft something, which I think they draft it in such a way that it's supposed to like you're supposed to go, oh my god, uh, I couldn't write like that. But actually, what they're actually writing is, if you wrote it in just plain ordinary language, it's not that, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's it's not it, like, for example, a court order. I've been in cases where the judge has said, you draft the order, knowing full well that I wouldn't be able to draft it. I mean, I could draft it, but I wouldn't draft using that kind of language that
Mm.
an ordinary person is not supposed to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I find quite irksome. But I mean,
Mm.
I do immigration law, and that is like, it's probably the least pretentious
Mm.
and the more easy, the most easy, one of the most easy, although it's the most fast changing area
Mm.
of law.
Yeah.
And it is a political hot potato.
Agreed. Yeah.
Um, it is perhaps the one that is most accessible in terms of understanding it.
Mm.
Um, but what have I learnt about myself?
Yeah.
Um, hmm, I don't know. I mean, like, I've learnt what cases I really like doing.
Mm.
I like doing cases where um, I feel like someone has a case, a good case, and that the decision that they've got is the wrong decision, and that I have the power to get the decision that meets the circumstances of the case. I like that.
Mm.
That's what I like. But there's a lot of things I don't like. But what have I learned about myself? I've learned I've learned what my shortcomings are. I mean,
Mm.
I'm rude. I get into trouble for being rude. I am rude, and I shouldn't be.
Rude in front of the judge.
I have been rude in front of judges, yeah, but I mean, that's not a good thing. It might sound like it is, but it's not really being
Mm.
rude. I mean, yeah, I can be, putting people down with sarcasm,
Mm.
not much.
Is that? Do you think? I mean, do you think is that a sort of frustration with the with the system? With
Well, I just think I'm a bitch.
yeah.
Uh,
Let's get it in simple
uh,
terms. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, um, well, none of us are perfect, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah. What have I learnt about myself? I don't know really. How to get up in the morning.
Mm. What? I mean,
Be disciplined. It's taught me about being disciplined, self-discipline, in the sense
yeah.
that I'm not so much now. My workload has really laxed off, but at one point, I was like just doing asylum cases. I was just going to court with a massive bundle of papers. This is like probably in the 90s,
Yeah.
maybe, or the early part of this century, which is what century? The 21st.
21st. 21st we're in. Yeah, I know.
Um, and just going to court with big bundles of papers, then coming home and reading another bundle of papers and going to court. That, I mean, yeah, I got burnt out doing that. That
Mm.
was very
Mm.
intense. And yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Did
Uh,
you like with some cases were you the sort of the person that would I mean I'm not saying become emotionally attached to the cases, but did you were you able to sort of keep them sort of distinct, from your life, I
yeah,
guess?
I mean, immigration isn't necessarily something that gives a lot of room for emotional attachment. Not like,
Mm.
say, if you did family law.
Right. Yeah.
you know, where children might be taken off their mothers or
Mm,
abused or something like that. But I mean, I certainly have had a fair quota of sleepless nights, tossing and turning and
mm,
trying to kind of going over arguments in my head
yeah.
and stressing as well, because it can be quite intense. Um, and yeah, and then I guess that is emotional attachment because it shouldn't be, yeah, it shouldn't be stopping you from sleeping.
From
So
sleeping.
yeah, you should be able to detach yourself and like objectify it more. But
Mm,
yeah, yeah, I'm not particularly brilliant at doing that. No,
mm,
but that's the way I am. I think. Yeah,
yeah.
you do get quite emotionally invested in the sense that you really feel like what if what if I've got it wrong?
Mm,
You do that sense of
the
responsibility.
responsibility.
What
Yeah.
happens if the judge turns around and says, "What a load of cockers," or like, yeah, what if you've got it wrong?
Mm.
Yeah, that it can be quite daunting in that way. Yeah, but
So
like I
what?
say, my workload isn't anything like what it used to be at the moment.
Is
I
is
mean,
that is that a sort of conscious decision to allow you a bit more space to concentrate on the music?
I don't
Well,
know. It hasn't. I mean, I think it, subconscious, definitely. I always seem
mm,
to find, I don't know, that if you get something in your head, like I want to do music again, it might not happen immediately, but
mm,
eventually what you've been thinking will start to happen.
yeah, I agree.
And I think that I did start to think, oh God, if I don't go back to music now, I never will. It'll be too late. So I think it's just kind of coincided really,
Mm,
um, naturally as a natural phenomenon. It hasn't like been something that I've actually thought, no, 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 don't send me, no, don't send me any referrals.
yeah.
Haven't taken any positive action in that regard. It's just something that's happened quite naturally, really. Nobody instructs me.
Was it,
Uh,
so what?
I
So
think,
how?
and also I've got really jaded with it. I mean, like
Yeah.
when I started out, you need the experience under your belt. So you go, and also what now doesn't seem like a lot of money. Sorry if this sounds really capitalistically crass, but
Mm,
what then when I was younger and started out sounded like a lot of money doesn't sound like much to me now.
mm,
So I mean, I'm like, oh God, I'm not doing that unless you pay me this
yeah.
amount of money because I need a motivation because I can do something else
Yes, that's
that is
true.
much more satisfying. You
Mm,
know, like I would invariably get a call at like 7 o'clock in the night. Can you go to court tomorrow? And I would have to stay up all night reading
preparing.
papers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that now.
Mm,
Or I would, but you'd have to pay me a hell of a lot of money.
yeah. No, I get you. I totally
And
hear you with that.
migrants
Yeah.
haven't got it. Because now I just feel like my life doesn't depend on that. It doesn't define who I am.
Mm,
And uh, so I've got better things to do. I can play with the dog, or I can go for a bike ride, or I can write a song, or I can watch the Americans on Channel 4. Have you seen that?
no, I haven't. No. Is it really good?
Yeah, it is. It's about these. It's very long. It goes on and on. Lots of series of it. It's one of those binge watchers, but it's really good. It's about these two Russian communist spies in America who hide their true identity for many, 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 many years. And it's
Right.
great. It's really good. It's really interesting. It takes you all the way through like the 60s, Kennedy, Bush, Reagan, or Reagan Bush, blah, blah, blah. Takes you through all of that, Vietnam, apartheid. It's great.
Yeah.
It's really
Wow.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Check it
It's
out.
it's interesting thinking back of all those. Reagan, Bush, Berlin Wall,
Yeah,
all that sort of stuff, all those kind of like monumental things that happened.
I know. Yeah, it does. Like now, they just, yeah. I went to Berlin recently, and I hadn't been to Berlin since the wall came down.
Mm.
Um, and in a way, I don't know, I kind of preferred it.
When the war was up.
Well, the atmosphere and the energy was much more tense, and
Mm.
it was much more dark, and it was much more gritty. Now
Do you
it's
know?
all now it's just all really. It's quite interesting riding on the train though to the airport, because it
Yeah.
went through all of what was East Germany, and it's
Mm.
actually quite still recognizable as East Germany, the architecture and the differences in and everything. Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember I went there a few years ago. It must have been, where are we now? 2023. Must have been about 2018, maybe. And
right.
I've gone there for a weekend, and usually when I go somewhere, I usually find out sort of what bands are playing, just to sort of go,
Good
and for
for
so
you.
for some reason I missed that. Well, I when I was preparing for it to go, I missed that Killing Joke were playing there, and that they have this relationship with
Oh wow.
Berlin. And then while I was there, I spotted that they were playing. So basically, I stayed another night, but I was walking from where I was staying to the gig, and it was going through partly through the old, what would have been the old East, and it
Right.
was it was in beginning of December, and it was freezing. There was freezing fog. And I was walking to the gate. It was probably around about kind of 7 o'clock or something like that. I was walking through, and it was just like this fog, this darkness, and these sort of old buildings. And I just sort of had and I never went to the to the to the old Berlin. I didn't go, but it just gave me this kind of like image of, oh my god, this must have been what it was like. It was just great.
Yeah.
It was
What
just
are you?
really kind of like spooky and sort of like I had
Yeah.
this kind of like this sort of image of sort of like this sort of John le Carre novel, of
Yeah.
like sort of spies in the
Crazy, isn't
shadows.
it? It's
Yeah.
so funny. I mean, that series Deutschland 83, Deutschland 86, which
Oh
I thought
yes.
was excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it just blows my mind to think, my God, I was playing in the Opus when all that was
Yeah.
going
When that was
on.
going on, yeah, that's
It's,
insane, isn't it?
yeah, well, when I was in Berlin this time, I went over because it's a bit of a long story. But this guy, John Malkin, he's done a book called Punk Revolution, which I recommend. It's really interesting. It basically
Mm,
is constituted by all these interviews he did with he's American from Santa Cruz. He did with all these bands like the Dead Kennedys,
mm,
Lydia Lunch, Gang of Four, all these bands who were quite political, many of
mm,
whom are American.
mm,
And it's quite a dense book. But he was supposed to be doing a talk at West Hampstead Theatre with John King from the Gang of Four,
mm,
and I decided to go to it, but I got there late, and John King had left, but there was
mm,
still like John Malkin who wrote the book, and a few people left in the bar. So I ended up having some drinks with them, and
mm.
John Malkin was doing a book launch in Berlin. Well, I managed to get myself invited along.
Brilliant, brilliant.
And he was doing the book launch in a church called Zionskirche, which is this really, I don't know if you noticed in Berlin, but there are these huge Protestant churches. They're
Yeah,
really big. And
yeah.
this church is quite famous because it um, gave refuge to Jews during the war, but
Mm,
also it's right by where the wall used to be. They had punk concerts and things, and it's quite political. It's quite funny to think of churches being associated with
mm,
politics.
yeah.
Well, in a way, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I find that quite interesting. And in fact, it's something that through reading the book, that came out to me as a revelation.
Mm.
What's the name of that girl band from Russia who got imprisoned? Um,
What, Pussy Riot?
Pussy Riot. I
Yeah.
always thought it was a bit odd that they played in a church because
Mm.
And I thought maybe that was really counter-political because the communists really frowned upon the church. Well, not frowned upon the church, they just didn't, you know, they persecuted
Yeah, they
the church.
persecuted it. Yeah.
But apparently, what's his face, Putin, he's
Mm.
really pro-church
Yeah.
because he's really pro this Russian tradition, this which is about which incorporates the church. So actually, when Pussy Riot played in the church,
Mm.
they were actually being very politically sound
Mm.
because they were actually denouncing something that Putin really supports.
Supports. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think John Lydon missed the whole point because, John Lydon's in the book, but is it all right to badmouth John Lydon? No, his wife just died. Apparently, John, who wrote the book, told me, God, there's so many people called John. I went, thank God you're called Giles. At least your mum had some imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, a John that sounds really funny. I mean, a John every week. A different John every week. Honestly, the word John, somebody should write a thesis about the history of the word.
The word John.
Anyway, John Malkin, who wrote the book, he got John Lydon to speak in it, but John Lydon apparently would only go in it. His people said he'll only go in your book if you put him on the front cover. So,
right, yeah, okay.
But I think a lot of people are a bit fed up with John Lydon at the moment because he seems to have got his politics a little bit up his backside.
Mm.
There's quite a few funny things that are quite, one would take issue with.
Yeah.
But why did I start waffling about? What did I start waffling about?
We were talking about the church in Berlin.
Oh right, the church in Berlin. Anyway,
and then you got an invite to this.
Oh yeah,
event
and they did a book launch there, and I did a couple of tracks and sang. It was really nice. It was really great. And as a result of doing that, I think the rumor went round locally. Oh, Lesley Woods and the Affair is playing in the church. And suddenly, when I started playing, all these people came rushing through the doors. It was really funny. It was really sweet. It was so nice. Video's not that bad either. Somebody sent me the video on Facebook. I was quite impressed. But yeah, and the guy who runs the church, he's a really nice guy. He organises cultural events there. But yeah, as a result of that, I got asked to play at the Female Empowerment Festival. Yeah, but there was another reason why I was going on about that. It was something to do with being back in Berlin, but I can't remember. So I keep losing my thread. See what kind of barrister I am. Oh, sorry, Your Honour. I can't remember what I was going to say. Can we take a
recess?
Yeah, that's the
judge will be like, okay, it's Lesley again. Yes, another recess. Yes.
Yes, Miss Longhurst Woods. That's the name I barrister under. Yeah.
What's happening? What's happening? So you're playing this festival on the 14th of October. And you've got what else is happening musically then?
Well, I'm trying to get this. Well, I keep calling it an EP, but only because it's got 4 tracks. I'm trying to get that ready to put out there. I'm a bit nervous about that, but then I think, oh look, this whole thing is about if you don't do this now, you never will. Just put it out there. It doesn't matter if people think it's no, they think it's no. Just do it and move on to the next thing. I did get in touch with Carol Hodge, and we were having WhatsApp talks, text, 3-way text with her tour manager about doing a UK tour in spring next year, which I'd be up for. And I was like, I knew she played at Rebellion, and I was like, oh, you did a great set at I hadn't seen her set at Rebellion, actually. I'd never heard Carol Hodge, but I thought because she played at Rebellion, she's probably quite punky. And then I went and listened to her on Spotify.
Yeah.
She's not punky at all.
No.
I got such a shock. I thought, am I listening to the right person?
Carol's great. I mean, she's really great. I mean,
Great voice.
she's a fantastic voice. She's a great songwriter as well. Really great
Yeah.
songwriter.
But I
Yeah,
wasn't very surprised. It
yeah,
wasn't anything like what I expected. And then I thought, well, actually, it might work as being
yeah,
on the same bill because it'd be
mm,
quite a contrast.
yeah,
But yeah, I'd be happy to support her.
yeah.
Uh,
That'd be amazing. Yeah,
yeah, but I don't know. Well, I'm pretty sure it's coming to pass.
yeah,
I hope so, but I'm sure there'll be something because I've been emailing all sorts of people like tour managers and
mm,
things and trying to get something, you know. But yeah, so yeah, it's steady, but it's moving in the right direction, I think.
definitely. I mean, I think it'd be a great move to get the to get the 4 songs out. If they come out as an EP to to do that. I think that'll be a massive step forward. Really.
Yeah. And also John Malkin, who wrote that book, he put
Mm,
me in touch. I haven't contacted her yet with a woman who played guitar with the Slits
mm,
um, when she stood in for Viv Albertine. I think it was when the Slits reformed, and I think
mm,
Ari Up was still around.
mm,
Um, but I've got to email her because I'm kind of thinking vaguely about maybe putting a little band together as a project
mm,
and like, I'm kind of vaguely thinking, I haven't asked her yet,
mm,
Gina, if she might want to play bass in
mm.
it.
Yeah,
So I think that would be really cool. Like guitarist from the Slits, Gina from the Raincoats, me, and then we
yeah,
just need a drummer,
yeah,
maybe a keyboard player as well.
yeah,
And yeah, I quite fancy having a horn player on the, not necessarily as a part of the band, but definitely on call who could
yeah.
like, because
Oh,
I like
absolutely.
a lot of music songs that I write. I always think, oh God, a cello would sound great in this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
Or
I better get practicing then, hadn't I?
yeah, yeah, I'm definitely up for collaborating. I think I have to prove. Well, I think perhaps I'm still in the process of doing that. I felt like I've got to prove if I can still get up there and play in front of people, and like what whether people might say, "Oh, you're a load of crap, go away and die." Um, you know, I, first of all, it was about like seeing whether do you know what I mean? Before
Yeah,
I got involved with other people trying to do something, I felt like I had to prove to myself whether I could do it. Do
I
you know?
get it.
You
I do get
understand?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I put myself in a room and like humiliated myself in front of because
Are you still feeling like that, or do you feel less like that now?
and less like that now. Now I've done the tour with the Chameleons and
Brilliant. Yeah,
I've got positive feedback.
yeah.
Um, I didn't get any bad feedback, but that's probably because people who probably think you're rubbish don't come and talk to you. But
Well, I mean, all the everything that I've seen has been fantastic. It's been
um,
really sort of positive, and people really glad to see you back. So I think
oh,
it's
thanks, Giles.
totally right direction, right
Oh,
steps to take.
God. Yeah, and
Yeah,
everybody's doing it, aren't they? I think also with me, knowing me, it's like, oh God, she's doing it. Gina's doing it. The Bush Tetras are doing it. Cynthia's doing it. I've got to do it too. I can't let them do it and me not do it.
why not?
A bit
Why not?
childish, really. That was me impersonating a 5-year-old. But Mum, they're all doing it.
We all revert to childhood at some stage, don't we? It's
Uh,
why not? Let's do it now.
oh God, I've got to tell you this story. You'll never guess who racked up in Hackney a couple of weeks ago.
Go on.
I was meeting my friend Malcolm Boyle, who makes films of people like The Wire and whatever. And anyway, I met him for lunch and in Hackney. Do you know Hackney?
Yeah,
You
yes,
know
ish. Yeah,
Hackney Central Station, then there's Hackney
yes,
Empire. There
yep.
was this big crowd of people around Hackney Empire, television cameras. I thought, oh God. They all come out from me. No, I didn't. So it was like, who's coming along? It was the Rolling Stones. Can you
Oh
believe it?
shit! Yes, I remember. I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Rolling Stones suddenly appeared.
Oh my god.
Um, yeah, it was like hilarious. I find that very encouraging. I mean, how old are they? They must be in their 80s.
I think Mick Jagger's what 80, 81 maybe. Or 80.
God,
Yeah.
blimey. So yeah, there's all these old people. I keep having this joke about how many Zimmer frames they're going to need on stage. It's like the pop festivals now. You have to
I
put
also
Zimmer frames, the stage plan, amp there, Zimmer frame there, Zimmer frame there.
I also think like some of the bands that were around at the time the au pairs were around, if they've either carried on going, and I'm thinking of bands or like Killing Joke, like A Certain Ratio, or those that have split and then reformed. I think honestly that you look at the majority of them, they come back like better than ever. But I think it's
Yeah,
perhaps because of that
they've
experience,
learned
that sort
how
of lived
to sing
experience.
in tune.
You know how to sing in tune, yes. You know how to tune their instruments now
And play them.
and play them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I noticed that about Morrissey. I think there was always something a little bit off key about Morrissey's singing, which was quite quirky and quite appealing. But he hasn't done anything very recently, but he did make a bit of a comeback. And I thought, oh God, he's singing really well now.
Mm,
You know? So I
absolutely,
think
yeah,
you're right. Yeah,
yeah.
I see that A Certain Ratio of doing they're doing like a tour, aren't they? But
They are
they're doing two sets because
two
they've got
sets.
such a lot of material, you know.
They've got a lot of material. I think they're doing the first. Is it the first? I think it's the first two albums
They were really nice
that
to
they're
me.
putting.
I messaged them on Facebook and said, "Can I support you?" But they said, you know, that they're doing two sets. They don't have a support
They
act.
don't
But
have
they
some.
were
They're just
very
doing
nice.
that. Yeah,
I was really
yeah.
surprised that they were so nice to me when they replied because
Oh,
I don't
they're
really
great.
know them.
No, they're great. They're great. Donald was on my podcast a couple of years ago. He's the drummer, and we've kept in touch. And I did an interview with the band as a whole. I think when they brought their remix out, it was just ahead of their remix album
Right.
for Loco Remezclada, which was like 2021, which is great. No, they're really great. They're always really supportive and
Yeah. Really
just
nice
really
people.
nice, open minded. And they're producing great music as well. They're one that is definitely producing some of the best stuff they've ever done. Sure.
Yeah, sure, for sure. They're great musicians and their
Yeah.
music is so unique. Yeah, that's what I really need. I need to be working with some good musos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway, you can come and play cello.
I'll come and play Charles somewhere in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest this evening, Giles Sibbald on cello. That'd be good.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Lesley,
Yeah.
thanks so much for this. This has been amazing.
How's it?
It has. Totally. It's been a huge amount of
Put
fun.
together nicely for me. Right, okay.